There's a new street fighter on your windowsill. The weapon is peace, the word is chill.
Hello there, gang, and welcome to another episode of Displaying Model Behaviour, the Earth's mightiest action figure video podcast. So take off your pants, crack a beer, and let's talk toys. Guys, recently I made a list, the top 100 action figures that I want to see, or the top 100 characters that I want to see in action figures. I'm going to start this again. Hello there, gang, and welcome to another episode of Displaying Model Behaviour, the Earth's mightiest action figure video podcast. So take off your pants, crack a beer, and let's talk toys. Guys, recently I made a list of the 100 Marvel Comics characters that I want to see in Marvel Legends form. And you know what? That didn't even scratch the surface, because as you guys must know, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. Spider-Man is my guy, he is my jam, he's the character that I am most obsessed with. But that means that there are about 50 years worth of Spider-Man stories and characters that still need the Marvel Legends treatment. And guys, we're going to go through them right now. This is the top 100 Spider-Man characters that I want to see in Marvel Legends form. To give a little structure, this list is alphabetized, so we're going to start with numbers first, and I have six-armed Norman Osborn. Yeah, who? What? Huh? This guy, a very modern character, probably one of the most modern ones on the list. Six-armed Norman Osborn is really cool, introduced in the Spider-Verse storyline, or Spider-Geddon storyline. Sorry, Spider-Geddon, the sequel to Spider-Verse. Six-armed Norman Osborn, from a reality, obviously, where it's Norman who gets bitten by a radioactive spider, but his transformation is a little bit different. And this is quite interesting now that I think about it, that he doesn't have the goblin formula in this reality, but still, he's a dick. So I think it might just be that Norman Osborn, by his personality alone, is destined to be an a-hole. And he basically sees what's happening in Spider-Geddon and all the Spider-Men and all the Peters working together to try and fight the Inheritors, and he just thinks, how can I benefit from this? How can I get out of this with more than I came into it? And he does what he can to basically usurp, betray, and finagle his way to more power during this storyline. And ultimately, he kind of gets away with it, in as much as he and his cohort, the Spiders-Man, who is just a really gross Spider-Man who got bitten, and rather than Peter getting spider powers, a whole bunch of spiders, like thousands and millions of spiders, became Peter Parker. Very gross. He looks like a normal Spider-Man under his costume, then you pull the mask away, and it's all just millions of spiders. Blah! I'm not even afraid of spiders, but that's creepy. Anyway, they kind of team up together, and they ultimately meet their end in Superior Spider-Man. We have a very short-run series of Dr. Octopus reclaiming the role of Superior Spider-Man. It was good times. And Norman Osborn and the Spiders-Man were his big kind of nemesis in that story, and ultimately led to the end of Superior Spider-Man and the return of classic Dr. Octopus, something that I was very sorry to see. I think we could live in a world with both Superior Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus, but that's not meant to be for now. But the Norman Osborn with six arms and a freaky like headgear type piece, that looks really cool, and I would love to see him in Legends form. The second numbered character is 90s Firestar. We have a Firestar now, which is great, but it is early New Warriors Firestar. It's Spider-Man and his amazing friends Firestar. Bright yellow costume, the little eyepiece is very campy, very kitsch, and very, very fun, but I want badass 90s Firestar. Specifically why? You know why. Because it's Maximum Carnage Firestar. I want the 90s New Warriors. I want the Clone Saga New Warriors. And Firestar is a huge part of that. With a black leather jacket, with the kind of fire sort of goggles sort of look, and the red and the black. Really cool design, and completely different from her original one. So definitely worthy of a reinterpretation. And Sesame Street style, A is for Absolute Carnage. I've spoken about him before, so we won't wax lyrical for too long, but Absolute Carnage, oh my goodness. Take the Carnage figure and then make him even more terrifying. This is something that could really only be done justice to in a deluxe or a bath type figure. But this freaky, spindly, bony, evil, demonic looking Carnage, oh my goodness, sign me up. Someone who is way overdue is Alistair Smythe, the Spider Slayer. You could also do Spencer Smythe as well, his elderly dad, but again, that is just an old man in a lab coat. Probably not a huge demand for that. But Alistair Smythe? Oh my goodness. This guy looks like the Terminator with a Kentucky waterfall going on. He looks awesome with huge big spikes, robot legs, so badass, so cool, and so underutilized. I'd love to see Alistair Smythe in the action figure form, and more specifically, of course, you could also extend that to his Spider Slayers as well. We had a rumor that we were going to be getting a Spider Slayer Build-A-Figure. Turns out it was the Armadillo instead. You know what? I am not mad about that exchange, but also it means we're owed a Spider Slayer. Why are we owed one? No particular reason, we just want one and we're very demanding people, and by we, I mean me. Agony. Agony, another character who I've mentioned plenty of times, an extra member of the Life Foundation Symbiotes. We need to finish that team. We seem to be getting one figure a year, which, hey, it keeps us invested at least. But a bright purple symbiote? That would be really cool. My only worry is it's going to be possibly kind of a lazy sort of repaint. I can imagine them just taking Scream and just painting her purple and going, there you go, it's Agony, and we'll just go, all right, there's 20 quid, thanks very much. But hey, as long as I have her in the collection, I don't really mind. I just want that set complete. This is a bit of a random one now. Alpha. Anyone remember Alpha? Yeah, let me tell you, from Spider-Man big time kind of era. Just picture Humberto Ramos sort of artwork. That kind of era is what we're talking about. And Alpha is a kid who gets Superman-ish superpowers, and it feels like Marvel were trying to push him. They were trying to make like a new sort of franchise. It's like, here, like this guy. But they also didn't write him as likable. They wrote him as kind of a arrogant kid who needed to be taken down a peg or two. That was the Alpha character. But he got introduced in Spider-Man. He had a little limited series of his own, and he was getting like a bit of traction, but then he was just dropped. Like dead weight. Marvel just dropped him like a bad habit. I guess he was a pet project, maybe of Dan Slott or whoever was writing the comics at the time. I don't know. But still, Alpha appeared. He made like a big splash. Hey, it's all about Alpha. He was the Poochie, to be honest. Maybe that was the problem. They Poochied him. It's like, this is Alpha. You're gonna like him. And we were like, no, you've almost intentionally written him to not be likable. So I don't know. This is a tough sell. And ultimately, he was forgotten. But you know what? I would kind of like an Alpha action figure. Did someone say Clone Saga? No? Well, we're going to talk about it anyway. Armada. Anyone remember Armada? No? Is it just me? It probably is just me. Armada, can I even justify him? Because he's not a great character. Even when I was reading him in the Clone Saga, I was like, this ain't much of much. But Armada is a dude in a orange and purple suit of armor. Looks very Centurion-ish. And his sort of gimmick is that he makes all these little robots, all these little evil, flying, military type attack sort of robots. Like mini Spider Slayers almost. And the funny thing about him is that, he treats them like they're kids. Or like they're married. Like he's obsessed and in love with his robots. So when Spider-Man smashes them, he's like, no, my babies, what are you doing? The more I explain it, the more of a lame character he sounds. But he's also a bright orange and purple dude in armor, which would make a lot of fun. And you can have the robots kind of flying around him, like you've got the Falcon with Red Wing, little attachments so they can zip around him. I think that would be kind of fun. I think I'm alone in this. I think I shouldn't labor this point too much. Armored now, but what kind of armored? First of all, we're talking armored black and silver Spider-Man. This is one that people have been requesting a lot, and I'm surprised that we haven't seen yet. I think it was Spectacular Spider-Man back in the early 90s. He needed an armored costume, and what he did was he just took his Spider-Man design, and he made all the blue bits black, and all the red bits silver armor, and it looked kind of fun. It's not like a breakaway amazing costume, because it is just Spider-Man, but with a bit of a palette swap. But it wouldn't just be that for an action figure, because the silver would need to be kind of raised and armory looking. You couldn't just repaint a regular Spidey. But if they did it, it would stand out a lot, especially if you had a proper shiny chrome silver. That would really pop on the shelf, and that would look really fun and cool. The costume only stuck around for about an issue or so it wasn't an iconic Spider-Man look, but at the same time, it's been referenced and brought up and shown in little montages and stuff so many times that I think we need to have it on the shelf. And sticking with armor, we have the other armor. I don't know if there's a specific name for it, but during the Brand New Day sort of period, oh no, it wasn't Brand New Day, it was Superior Spider-Man. There we go. During the Superior Spider-Man story, we had a guy called Massacre, I think, who was just killing a whole bunch of people. And Spider-Man, or Superior Spider-Man, needed a new costume that has more armor. Actually, was it Superior Spider-Man, or was he introduced? I think maybe he was introduced in Brand New Day, and then Superior Spider-Man kills him in Superior Spider-Man. That might be it. So I think it was Peter who got the armored costume. And it was kind of an interesting looking costume because it looked kind of ninja-ish. It was very black with yellow and actual like armor, kind of like chainmail looking sort of armor, that kind of fish scale sort of approach with a raised collar to protect his neck and all that kind of thing. It was unique and I wouldn't want it to stick around. I didn't think it was a cool looking costume, but it was an interesting looking costume and definitely one that would make a really fun addition to the Spider-Man shelf. Bagman does whatever a bagman can. Yes, Bagman! Now this is stupid, but so much fun, and that's something they could do relatively easily, I think. We're getting new Fantastic Four costumes for a start. Then again, this is the black and blue Fantastic Four costume, but we have that too. Bagman was a very funny moment where Spider-Man needed to leave the Fantastic Four's headquarters, but he didn't have his costume, and Johnny Storm was like, "Don't worry, I've got something for you." Thus, the world was given the amazing Bagman, where Peter Parker has to swing away from the Baxter building wearing an oversized, baggy Fantastic Four costume, a paper bag on his head, and a "Kick Me" sign on his back. And it's just such a fun, ridiculous image, and one that has stayed with us. We've had different artists doing like tribute covers or flashbacks or montages. The amazing Bagman had a life of his own, and I think it's a real missed opportunity that we haven't actually seen the amazing Bagman in action figure form yet. But now is the chance, Hasbro. Come on, give us the amazing Bagman. This next one is a character that I'm kind of torn on because I love the character originally, but this is like the lowest version of that character, and that is the Jackal Ben Reilly. Yes, when Ben Reilly was first brought back to the comics, we had the Clone Conspiracy, a garbage story that just destroyed so many characters. When I say so many characters, I mean one character, which is Ben Reilly, which to me is bad and egregious enough. But what I will say is, he had kind of a cool look when they first introduced him. There was the Jackal, who we all assumed was another Miles Warren clone, or the original Miles Warren, we will never know. But it was a gentleman in a red suit, with like a black shirt, red tie, and an Anubis type Jackal mask. And that and that looked really cool. It was a cool design. I love this sort of Egyptian kind of look, and I'd like to see more characters with that sort of motif, because it looks badass and mysterious and cool. And when we got the initial reveal of the Anubis mask being lifted off and Ben Reilly's face under there, or Peter Parker's face under there, that was a cool reveal. It all went downhill from there. But still, a figure of the Jackal in that form, I'd like that. You know, a character that's way too big and yet way too unpopular to get made? The Big Wheel. I mean, this is a classic bonkers nonsense Spider-Man foe. Dude driving like a giant Ferris wheel, essentially. We ain't ever gonna get him. And to be honest, I mean, would I even want him if I did get him? It's a giant Ferris wheel with guns on the side and a guy driving it. It's like, where am I going to put this? He's not exactly going to go next to Galactus and the Sentinel. There's not exactly iconic characters, but it would be kind of fun. And just because I like people to be represented, maybe just having the guy, the big wheel dude, without his big wheel. But that would be really kind of like, really, Hasbro? You giving us Big Wheel without the big wheel? There's one thing wrong with that title. I can imagine the bitching, because I would probably be doing it. So yeah, maybe I can understand why they're steering away from that. But Big Wheel is such a goofy character that it would be fun to see him represented. You want to get ridiculously obscure? Blood Spider. Who? Yeah, okay, so there's just one issue in Amazing Spider-Man where Spidey has to fight a team of villains who are kind of modeled after the Avengers or classic Marvel heroes, but just mercenary bad guy versions, and one of them is the Blood Spider, who looks like Spider-Man in design, but except his costume is all different colors and he's got like a backpack on his back that shoots stuff. It's just ridiculous. But when I saw the character drawn by Mark Bagley, which obviously helps, I thought, that's a cool, funky, weird design. So I might be alone on my own on this little island, but I'm saying, give us Blood Spider. Bloody Mary. We have Typhoid Mary, and it's a modern version of Typhoid Mary. I would quite like the older version with the pink tank top sort of jumper and that kind of 80s Daredevil Bloody Mary, or Typhoid Mary. I'm getting all my Marys confused, but the one that's in B here is Bloody Mary. And this is more that I'm thinking about Spider-Man during his over the edge kind of phase where he has this fight with Bloody Mary, and she looks really cool. She's kind of like just got knives and blades strapped all over her. She looks very menacing and threatening. And the thing with Typhoid Mary, or whatever name you want to use, she has these different personalities and different looks and styles, and you could do so many different versions of her. And Bloody Mary is one in particular that resonates with me with my early Spider-Man reading that I'd love to get the figure of. Sheer Cardiac. Yes, Cardiac is a figure that I've spoken about before, so again, I won't go into him too much here, but he's a really cool design, bright blue and white, and would just stand out on the shelf so well. There's a rumor going around, there's a little bit of scuttlebutt, that the creator of Cardiac, Eric Larson, has a deal with Marvel where they would have to pay him royalties to make action figures and merchandise of Cardiac, which is why we haven't seen him. Is that true? I don't know. I don't make the news, I just report it. But it would explain why we haven't had such a cool toyetic looking character given to us in Legends form. You guys might have to help me out with some of the details here, because I'm going to say Lady Octopus, and in my version here it's Carolyn Traynor, Seward Traynor's daughter and the replacement Dr. Octopus after the original was killed by Kane. She has such a bright, colourful look. This lady wearing the orange, wearing the green jumpsuit with the big yellow octopus around it and the bright pinky purple hair. It's a really, really cool design, and again, when Mark Bagley drew her, she looked awesome. But we never really saw much more of her. Now, this is where I need some help, because we have the kind of female Sinister Six now that's led by Lady Beetle, and there is a Lady Octopus in that Sinister Six, but she doesn't look like Carolyn Traynor, doesn't have the hair and all that kind of thing. And I'm thinking, is this the same Lady Octopus, or is this a different Lady Octopus? What Lady Octopi are we dealing with here? Granted, I could have looked it up before doing this video, but you know what? I'm sat here now, so it's not going to happen. But if it is the same character, then I say bring back the pink hair to the comics. But more to the point, bring the pink hair onto our shelves. Now that we've got Shriek, all we need to complete our Maximum Carnage team is Carrion. Why are we still waiting for Carrion? He has been around in the comics for decades, literal decades. He played a huge part in the Clone Saga and all these different stories that are so iconic, I suppose. Like, it's a big deal. Carrion should be a big deal, and he shouldn't be that difficult to bash together. Just a skinny figure with some rags on him. You can do that, but have him floating around next to Hobgoblin or any of the other creepy characters, or of course, as I was saying, next to Shriek in the Maximum Carnage display. That's something that we're desperately in need of. Come on, Hasbro, give us, finally, Carrion. A real toyetic one who I would love to see zipping around the room is Chance. Chance is such a fun bad guy who, he's a mercenary, whereas rather than taking payments for his jobs, he places a bet. He bets that he can complete the job, and then if he wins, he gets all the money, and I like that as a gimmick. And this character is a fun looking guy with a green jumpsuit and this big yellow helmet and a little pencil mustache and the jetpack on the back. He's not something that would break the bank for Hasbro to make, but I also understand that he's not exactly an A-lister. But to me, he's an A-lister in my heart, and I would love to see him represented. I love my ridiculous jobbers, and they don't get more ridiculous or jobbery than the Circus of Crime. You want some hired goons? These are hired goons, but they're fun hired goons. They're ridiculous. They've got that sort of ridiculous kind of 1920s gangster, see, you gotta put you away. So that's a fun kind of ridiculous look that's going to go so well, and they could give us other sort of gangster type characters. I like my gangsters, and I don't think gangsters are well enough represented. So give us the Circus of Crime to fight against guys like Spider-Man, Luke Cage, Daredevil. They would be so much fun to have on the shelves. Got a couple of classics now, and the first one is Classic Boomerang. Boomerang is featuring massively in the Spider-Man comics at the moment. There was a really great storyline recently where Peter and he were actually roommates, and they wouldn't let on that they knew the other's identity. Well, actually, Boomerang didn't know Peter's identity, but vice versa. But there was a fun kind of dynamic, and ultimately it's like, oh, is Boomerang going to betray Spidey? It was a really good story. But of course, we have the modern Boomerang in his modern Boomerang costume, which I think really does need a new new representation. That figure is starting to show its age. He came out right back at the start of the Return of Marvel Legends line, and we need another Boomerang. That's what I'm trying to say, is what I'm trying to get to, this point in this entry. But especially the original Boomerang costume, which is so much more bright and colourful and toyetic and silly, but that's half the fun. So it's Boomerang, but he's got the overall bodysuit with the open face mask and like the Boomerang motifs all over him. He looks bonkers, but he also looks great, and I'd love to have him. Speaking of classics, we go on to classic Jack-O-Lantern. So we have a modern Jack-O-Lantern who some people lament, I think is really cool. Looks like a cool mercenary kind of body, but then he's got the broomstick and the Jack-O-Lantern head. That's great. But I want retro Jack-O-Lantern. I want Jack-O-Lantern on the chunkier body with more of a chainmail looking type yellow and green armor and the ridiculous kind of like pumpkin disc sort of thing that he flies around on. The flaming pumpkin head, it's great. The one we have already is fine. I mean, by all means redo it, because I want more flaming pumpkins in my life. But the classic, old school, more sort of goofy, medieval looking Jack-O-Lantern, yeah, I'd buy the heck out of that. And the final classic one that I know loads of people are asking for is classic Shocker. Shocker is a bit of a funny one that is quite hard to come by these days, and you wouldn't have thought so. Like, why is Shocker so hard to find? Well, I don't know. He's not an army builder and he's not like an A-lister, but he's not that easy. You got to pay some money to get Shocker. But even then, that's the modern Shocker we have. Some of them even have the Thunderbolts logo on him, like mine does. But I want a classic old school poofy costume, quilted looking Shocker that we're all familiar with from early Spider-Man. He would go so great in the retro wave. I'm sure Hasbro must be thinking about it. They must be going, a lot of people are asking for this guy. So I think it's just a matter of time, but all I want to do is bring that time frame forward so I can add Shocker to my shelves. This is quite a specific one to me, but I know that I'm not alone because I've seen lots of customs of this, and this is Clone Hunter Spider-Man, and you could kit bash this so easily. So during the Clone Saga, Peter doesn't have his costume with him. He needs to go and rescue Mary Jane, so he's just wearing his jacket and jeans, and he whips on his black costume Spider-Man mask and the gloves and the boots, and that's it. So it's just a dude in jeans, t-shirt and leather jacket. I think it's like a brown leather jacket. The retro Peter Parker almost gets it right, but he's wearing a shirt, a button shirt underneath, so it doesn't work. Useless. So we need a completely new one just for me. But it just looked cool. For whatever reason, this bashed together Spider-Man costume, he's got his web shooters visible on the outside. It looks like a desperate Spider-Man was just like, I need to grab whatever I can and go into business. I don't know why I'm trying to say that, but you know what I'm saying. He looks cool, he looks badass, and I'd love to have this guy. Sticking with the Clone Saga, and we've got a few here now. Cyber Hobgoblin. I know loads of people want a classic Hobgoblin to be re-released, and it seems like we're definitely going to get that. They've been teasing it on the Hasbro live stream so much. So I'm sure Classic Goblin is on his way, but I want Cyber Hobgoblin. During the Clone Saga, the Hobgoblin got all these cybernetic upgrades, and it only lasted for a couple of issues, but it looked cool. I love cyborgs. Cyborgs are badass. So cyborg goblins? Yeah, I'll take that. Thank you. Let me buy 2. Delilah now is a mercenary for the Rose, and he's going to come up later obviously, but she looked really cool. She was this assassin lady in purple and pink, and it was funny, she was first drawn by Mark Bagley and she was very kind of feminine and pretty but very athletic and very cool, and then she was sort of redesigned slightly by Steve Scrose, who took the character in a more masculine kind of direction that, you know, she reminded me of China in her DX type days, and not in a bad way either. It was just a cool kind of redesign where so many characters are drawn, or so many female characters are drawn sort of classically feminine. She was drawn more as a muscular, actually China's not a fair comparison, more like Abby from The Last of Us 2. That's a better way of looking at it, where she's still feminine but she's got those more sort of exaggerated muscular athletic kind of proportions that you would buy. It's like, well no, in this world a female assassin wanting to train to be the best would get kind of jacked up and CrossFit type strong, and that would be a really cool design, which we don't really have. Even She-Hulk is the more kind of feminine looking She-Hulk, although now in the comics she has more of that CrossFit athletic bodybuilder type physique, which works and makes sense because it's different from your regular female buck, and that would be really cool to see. Dusk, one of the slingers. Will we see the rest of them on this list? Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet. Dusk is the least interesting character visually because it is just a black costume with sort of swoopy arm things, which if the Spider-Man's webbing is anything to go by, is not an easy thing to make in action figure form, so that might be a bit tricky. Just do material, I guess, just like Storm's cape sort of thing. Bit of material, that'll work fine. But Dusk, one of the identities that Peter Parker took on when he was trying to hide from as Spider-Man. It was a bit of a round the hedges kind of way of doing things, but still, I want to get the slingers, and Dusk is one of the 4, so we got to have them. And the thing is, Dusk was originally Peter Parker in that costume, but then also when the Slingers series came out, I think it was a girl who was wearing the Dusk costume, so male or female, I don't mind. Actually, yeah, give us the female one, give us the Slingers team, because then that's a separate character altogether. So yeah, that would be great. The first member of the Slingers on the list is Dusk. Another modern character, we have Dylan Brock, Eddie Brock's son. Spoken about him before, so won't go on too long, but yeah, he's such a big character now in Venom and the wider Marvel universe because he has this connection to the symbiote hive mind. He kind of saved the world recently, so considering what an important role he plays in the overall greater Marvel universe, I think he really needs to be represented. I'd like a whole modern kind of Venom wave, but that's another video for another time. In the meantime, I'll happily take Dylan Brock. Going back to Lady Beetle's female Sinister Six, we have female Electro, and this is a really cool one. The story is that she was Electro's girlfriend and he accidentally killed her when he was losing control of his powers. And then I think she was resurrected in the clone conspiracy. I'm not entirely sure if that's how she came back, but I think so. And it's fun because she has a basic Electro costume, but just more of a female kind of version of it. And it's not the most standout looking sort of character, but it's fun to have that represented. And I love the actual character in herself in that she's completely amoral. Like, it's not like she's a better version of Electro or a nicer version or anything. No. She's about as low down and dirty as they come, and that's really kind of fun. So I'd love to see the full female superior foes, Sinister Six, whatever that team is called, represented. And Lady Electro, if that is the name she's going by, would be a really fun addition. Alright, we gotta go big chunky build-a-figure here with this next one, and that is Ends of the Earth, Dr. Octopus. So this is during the time when Doc Ock is on life support and he's knocking on death's door. And it was an interesting way they got to this point where basically they said that Dr. Octopus is just a human being, and after years and years of taking punch after punch to the head, he's got a degenerative disease because you can't take a brutal beating from superheroes on a regular basis and be okay. So he's in this life support system that changes throughout the years as we see more artists and more writers handle the character. And eventually in the Ends of the Earth saga, he's got a full-on like robot mech suit type thing. He looks really cool with massive big tentacle arms. Really badass looking Doc Ock. I don't know if maybe it's probably too obscure to ever get as an actual figure, but still I would love to see that. The massive tentacle, big bad scary Ends of the Earth Doc Ock. Yeah, make it happen. Just like the Circus of Crime, more ridiculous goons, we have the Enforcers. Fancy Dan and the rest of his gang, they are just mercenaries for hire. They pop up all over the place, and that's why they would be so much fun on our shelves, because they could go with anyone, as long as they're sort of street level. These guys aren't exactly the heaviest of hitters, but still, Spider-Man in particular, that's his wheelhouse. It's goons and thugs and gangsters. Not devils, not cosmic stuff, guys. Marvel, just keep your cosmic out of my Spider-Man. I want him fighting mad scientists and gangsters. That's the way it should be. That's the way it's written, and it forever shall be. And with that in mind, give us the Enforcers. Ezekiel, a character who we probably won't see because he's essentially just an old man in a suit, but he was the character who pitched the concept that has rolled with Spider-Man for the last couple of decades now. Did the spider give Peter the powers because it was irradiated? Or did the spider give Peter his powers and then die of radiation? Basically, is Peter destined to be a spider totem, a spider god sort of representative? This is what kicked off Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon, and the whole idea that actually there is more to Peter than just a fluke scientific accident, but actually there's a whole lineage and history of spider totems, and it's kind of cool. And the nice thing about this story is that you can buy into it as much as you want to. You can say, oh yeah, this is definitely the history of Spider-Man and how it works now, or you can say, no, that's just that character's theory. I like that they don't sort of stress it too much, so you can make Spider-Man mystical if you want, or you can go the science route. I'm more of a science route person, but I love the doors the mysticism opens up. And Ezekiel is the guy who's got all of these Spider-Man powers because he is a totem as well. And he's like, no, you're not unique. Different people have these spider totem powers. And unfortunately, as I say, he's just an old guy in a suit, so not that toyetic, but still an iconic character who deserves to be represented on the Spider-Man timeline. A running joke for about the last 30 years in Spider-Man has been, who is facade or facade? I know the word facade, but I kind of read it facade, the facade armor. Is it the facade armor? That's why I'll never know for sure, because we've never had him appear in a cartoon or a movie where someone says, oh, it's the facade armor. Either way, it just sounds odd, but you know what I'm saying. We never found out who was inside the armor. It was a big mystery. This whole long storyline. Who is facade? I'm just going to stick with facade because it's an acronym anyway. I can't remember what it stands for. But the armor looked cool. We always need more armors on our shelves, and also we need to see this character back in the comics just so we can find out finally who is facade and how do you pronounce his name. A huge one just for me is Flipside 2099. My first ever cosplay costume. This was one of my first ever comics as well. When I saw the Spider-Man cartoon in 1994, I went out and bought every single Spider-Man comic on the news rack, and one of them was the debut of Flipside in 2099, and I thought, this guy looks so cool. An android version of Spider-Man from the future with a costume that's a combination of Spider-Man 2099 and Venom, and just so badass, so awesome, so obscure, we'll never see him, but boy would I love to. Now hear me out on this one, because it's possibly the most maligned character in Spider-Man history, but Freak, a absolute product of Brand New Day, one of the first new characters brought in that storyline. Freak is a meth addict, I think, who thought that he was smoking drugs, but it turns out it was this experimental formula that just mutated his body into a freak. And the idea with the character is that he's constantly mutating, because anytime that he suffers damage or something, his body will mutate to protect himself from that. So he'll grow armor or scales or all sorts of things. And the whole idea is that he looks hideous. He looks disgusting and ugly. And I don't think anyone really liked the character, besides myself, where I thought, this is so weird and bonkers and gross, I really dig him. So what would a Freak character even look like? It's hard to say, because the character changes every time we see him. But the fact that he is monstrous and scaly and gross and disgusting, yeah, of course I want him on my shelf. A big one for folks is the Future Foundation. When Johnny Storm had a little case of death for a while, Peter Parker joined the Fantastic Four and they renamed themselves the Future Foundation. And they all had these cool, badass black and white costumes. We've had a Future Foundation Spider-Man from years ago, but we need a new one. I mean, the rest of the Fantastic Four team would be kind of cool, but I don't really want them to be released, because then I would have to buy them, and then I would have 4 Fantastic Four teams, and that's 3 more Fantastic Four teams than any one human being needs. But just Spider-Man in his Future Foundation costume? Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Let's circle back around to the Clone Saga now with Gaunt, the person who we thought was the mastermind behind the Clone Saga until someone else was revealed. But he is a character, he's the robot master, and he's in this life support armor, and it's just a cool looking figure. Now the thing is, the Clone Saga I feel is quite underrepresented. We still have a lot of characters from there who we haven't seen yet, so clearly it's not a priority for Hasbro, so Gaunt would be quite far down the list. But maybe that's what I keep telling myself, if I keep collecting action figures long enough, one day we'll get ourselves Gaunt. It's time to monkey around now with the Gibbon. I love the zoo crew, the crazy animal-based villains, and there was one Spider-Man story where I think he teamed up with Kangaroo and Grizzly, and it was just delightful. It was a light-hearted Spider-Man caper, and I'm all for that. And the Gibbon is kind of a, dare I say, sort of a pathetic character. Like, he's not evil, he's just trying to get by, essentially. So yeah, give us the crazy monkey man in the Gibbon costume. I would love that. Gog. This is a funny one. This is a new addition to Spider-Man's kind of mythos or supporting cast. Gog is this huge, big, terrifying orange dragon monster type creature, but Peter was able to shrink him down to the size of a cute little pet. And now Gog lives with Peter and Boomerang in their apartment, and he's like a little sidekick, a little mascot. But he does have the ability, if he pulls off the collar, to grow to monstrous size again. But he's essentially like a little pet dog, basically. And I think as an accessory, oh, that's a thought. There you go. Give us a new Boomerang with a Gog accessory. I'd love that. We had Gibbon, but now we have the Grizzly, another one of the amazing zoo crew, and it's a dude in a bear costume. What's not to like? We just got Ursa Major. I think I should be getting my Ursa Major in a couple of days' time, which is quite exciting. But yeah, just take that Ursa Major body, sort of change the head, put a dude's face there with the bear going around it. You got yourself a Grizzly. And he's, again, a bonkers, silly, ridiculous character, which is why I really want to monkey around. My character who is possibly way outside Spider-Man's weight class that has featured many times is Gravitron, or Gravitron, I need to look that one up. But Graviton is a guy who can control and manipulate gravity, so he's like an Avengers level villain. Spider-Man has tussled with him in the past, and actually it's a really fun kind of dynamic because I love it when Spidey is going up against someone so much more powerful. That's what you see Peter Parker at his best, trying to fight against the odds. So to have Graviton, yeah, it's a bit of a stretch to have him as a Spider-Man villain, but come on, he's my list, so I'm adding him. A big iconic Spider-Man character who we haven't had properly represented is Hammerhead. Yes, we had a Hammerhead with the chameleon, but come on, I don't count. We want a proper big suited, chunky gangster Tommy gun Hammerhead. Surprised we haven't got him yet. It seems like just a matter of time. Eventually we'll see Hammerhead, but so far he's definitely a big part of our shelves that's lacking. So come on, Hasbro, give us a proper gangster chunky Hammerhead. In possibly the easiest repaint in the world, I would like the Harry Osborn Green Goblin. What's the difference between the Norman Osborn Green Goblin and the Harry Osborn Green Goblin? Very little, to be honest, but I would just say if you took the retro Green Goblin and just dulled his colours down a bit, then you've got Harry as the Green Goblin, because the retro Goblin is great, but he is very disco. He is bright, luminous, pink and vibrating kind of green, whereas Harry is definitely more muted colours, so that would be really cool to see. And then you can kind of have that era where Harry was trying to do good as the Goblin but ultimately was driven crazy. Give us an unmasked Harry head as well, which again pretty much looks like Norman but a little bit smaller and slimmer. That would be great, and a character who definitely needs to be represented on the shelves. Speaking of Norman Osborn, for a time he was the leader of the Thunderbolts, and when he was, or actually it wasn't even when he was leading Thunderbolts, he was leading Hammer, and he ran a campaign against Spider-Man. He recruited the Thunderbolts to take out the wall crawler, one of whom was Radioactive Man in his more modern Radioactive Man guise, where he's wearing like a full-on hazmat suit. That would be really cool. Now that I'm thinking about it, some customizer could probably take the hazmat suit from the NECA Back to the Future characters and redo that as a Radioactive Man. That could be kind of fun. But yeah, I want a modern Thunderbolts team to go with my Dark Avengers team. So yeah, Radioactive Man in the I was gonna say HasLab in the hazmat suit. That would be a good addition. Another slinger now is Hornet, and Hornet has a really cool costume. Very advanced, high-tech kind of thing. Looks a little bit like Mach 1, but he's got the Hornet sort of wings on the back, and he's bright and colourful too, with black and green and yellow and purple. So a really fun, toyetic character. In the comics, I don't know what's happening with that character. Like, he popped up in the awful Scarlet Spider series, and it's like, wait, is this the real Hornet or someone else? Or it was awful garbage. But if we take our minds back to happier times of the late 90s when it was Peter in the costume, that would be a great addition to the shelf. This is a giveaway to someone who's coming later in the list. I have an inner demon. No, I don't actually have an inner demon, they're all outer demons. But Mr. Negative, who we'll get to later, has his goons, his hired goons, who are the inner demons, who are just guys in suits with cool kind of masks that look like sort of Chinese mythology demon type masks, hence the name Inner Demons. And you could do an army builder of this so easily because the masks all look slightly different and the guys all have different martial arts type weapons like katanas and bow staffs and all that kind of stuff. So you could do a simple suit body with a few interchangeable heads of the different demon masks. That would be so cool. A character in desperate need of an update, and one that Iron Man fans would appreciate as well, is Iron Patriot. Yes, when Norman Osborn took over the role of Iron Man in the comics, he was in charge of Hammer, and he painted himself in the red, white, and blue. He was the Iron Patriot, and we have an old version of this figure, but it's quite small. It's from an older time when figures weren't quite as chunky, and he doesn't really stack up properly, I don't think, with the modern Marvel Legends. So give us a beautiful, bold, red, white, and blue repainted Iron Patriot. That would look fantastic. And speaking of Iron Spider, come on guys, I don't need to tell you this. Iron Spider is a real iconic look that is now being used in the movies. Like, how have we got all these movie versions and not a comic book one? I'm still waiting for my amazing Yamaguchi figure to come through. But when he does, I know that will be the cue for Hasbro to then release their own Iron Spiders, which, you know what? I'm actually fine with, because I might just buy 3 of them, and then I can make the Iron Spiders team, which is made up of 3 clones of a guy called MVP, which would be very obscure and quite an expensive addition now that I think about it, but still, it would be a lot of fun. Getting real way out there, we have a character called Itsy Bitsy. Now, she was a Villainous from the Spider-Man and Deadpool series. They have a team-up series, and Itsy Bitsy was a real big-time menace to them. I can't even remember what her origin is. I might have to reread it, because I remember it was a fun story. But she looks so cool. This female character with blue skin, these extra spider arms, blonde hair, and she's got like the spider eyes. Real freaky looking, but really toyetic. I would love to see her represented on the shelf. Going back to the Clone Saga now, we have 90s Jackal. And again, I've spoken about him plenty of times. But yeah, the Jackal, but with the Joker-looking kind of facial features and a black leather trench coat. Pack him in with an accessory of Jack, the little sort of mini version of himself that he made. That would be really fun to have on the shelf, and more essential Clone Saga representation. Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot. Anyone remember Jackpot? She was a big deal for a little while, during a time when people weren't enjoying the Spider-Man comics. Yeah, maybe this is why we haven't had a figure of her yet. When Brand New Day happened and the marriage was erased, this new character, Jackpot, appeared, who basically just was drawn as Mary Jane. And it's like, ooh, who is Jackpot? Oh geez, I wonder. So it was so obvious that Jackpot was Mary Jane that ultimately when they did the reveal, it wasn't Mary Jane, because it would have been too obvious. But also like, well, that's what you've led us to believe, and we don't really care, and no one else did, and actually, I don't think I really care either. Yeah, don't give us a Jackpot figure. Here's a fun one now. Japanese Spider-Man from Spider-Verse, or more specifically from the 1970s Japanese live-action Spider-Man TV show, which is completely removed from the Spider-Man comics. This Spider-Man character was given the spider powers by like some spider demon god type thing. He has a giant Power Rangers Voltron style Spider-Man robot mech that he jumps into. So wonderfully bonkers. Okay, unless it's a HasLab, I don't think we're going to get Leopard on his mech that he rides, which is fine. I don't think we need it, to be honest. I mean, gosh, even I might not get that. That might be a bit too much. But just the Japanese Spider-Man, who is basically just looks like Spider-Man, but with more 70s kind of proportions. Little smaller Spider-Man lenses, and just a few little tweaks on his costume that separate him. But just to have him represented officially as Japanese Spider-Man, that would be a lot of fun to see. Let's go back to gangsters and Clone Saga with Jimmy Six. I've spoken about him before. He is a gangster who Ben Reilly saved when he was about to be assassinated by his gangster buddies, I suppose. That's friendship for you. But then, of course, once Ben does save him, he then kind of becomes Ben's friend, roommate, much to Ben's chagrin. He's like, look, I don't want to be friends with a gangster. And he's like, well, tough, because this is happening now. And an unresolved plot line that never really went anywhere, which is a shame, was that when Ben Reilly died, it was widely attributed in the newspapers and whatever that it was Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, who killed him. And Jimmy Six was like, I'm going to get revenge on this guy. And sadly, we never saw that. We never saw that happen. Although I guess that if he did try and get revenge on Norman Osborn, it probably didn't end up too well for him. But still, a big, chunky Jimmy Six type figure, yeah, that would be great to have. Obscure Clone Saga character? Check. We have Joystick. There was a storyline in which these characters all participated in something called The Great Game, which is basically just superhuman fighting with people betting on it. That's about it. But Joystick was one of those characters. And again, it's one of those things where not everyone agrees to be in the game. They're just like, oh, am I in the game now? Oh, great, okay. So Joystick is someone who wanted to be in the game. She's kind of a mercenary, gun for hire type character. And her gimmick is that she has these Eskimo? I never know how to pronounce them. Eskimo sticks like Black Widow has. Hence Joystick. And it's a very 90s kind of costume with sort of half face mask and all this kind of gear going on, but she looked really fun and I'd love to see her in action figure form. Judas Traveler, the ultimate big bad character who never was. Started out as a god, ended up as a crazy old man. What happened? Well, I don't care whether he's a god or an idiot. He's a figure that would look great because he's so interestingly designed with long flowing robes and a trench coat and a big sort of old man beard and chains and all sorts of accoutrements. I don't think we'll ever get him because he's not a widely appreciated character. Just this guy as a Judas Traveler stan. But still, as a Clone Saga figure, he's kind of essential. We've had the Vault Guardsmen, but now it's time for the Jury. This is a team of people wearing Guardsman armor that they've upgraded to make themselves vigilantes. And what they'll do is they'll capture villains or people who they consider to be villains and put them on a mock trial to decide if they're innocent, guilty, and whether or not they need to be punished. The Jury didn't stick around for a long time, but they had a cool look. If you imagine the Vault Guardsmen, but with more spikes and extra cool stuff on their armor, it would be an easy little quick kit bash for Hasbro to do. So I say, make it happen. What I want is justice for all. Yes! New Warriors 90s justice. We've had 90s Firestar, but where is justice? We've had Vance Astro in that weird space age looking kind of character design, which I think is him from another universe maybe? I'm not too sure. But still, I want cape and cowl justice from the 90s. It's highly likely to happen because it looks like we are getting the New Warriors slowly being filtered into our collections. But I'm just saying, hurry up. Give me justice and I can remake our 90s New Warriors and that'll just make me very happy. Of course, you guys know me. I love Kane, and I have my custom Kane, who is amazing, but I would just like to see what Marvel Legends would do with their own version of Kane. Give him two different faces with an unmasked face with all the scarring on there. Give him a burning Mark of Kane hand. That would be so awesome, and again, an essential character who is long overdue the Marvel Legends treatment. We've had Gibbon, we've had Grizzly, now to complete our amazing zoo crew we need the Kangaroo. And this would be so bonkers. A big fat guy in a kangaroo mech suit with mechanical legs and the ears and the tail. Why give yourself ears? They don't do anything, you're just wearing a Halloween costume. Doesn't matter, because it's fun and bonkers and ridiculous. I would love to see Kangaroo on the shelf. Super modern character now, we have Kindred. Yes, the evil, demonic, mummified, skeleton-looking character with the centipedes wrapped around him. I'm sure we must get him at some point soon because he is a big money player in Spider-Man now. I won't go into the history of it because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't read the stories yet, but Kindred just looks cool. Skulls and skeletons with mummy bandages. Yeah, that's wicked. With the big centipedes too. Ah, yeah, take my money. Another addition to the female Sinister Six is Lady Scorpion, or Scorpina, or whatever name she's going by. It's just a lady with scorpion accoutrements, but you know what? I'm down with that, with the big tail and the snippers, which is something that our regular Mac Gargan doesn't have, which is kind of surprising that they never incorporated that into his costume earlier. Later versions of him have actual scorpion pincers, but it seems like such a home run type thing to do. It's like, well, he's the Scorpion, so what would you expect? Well, at least she went that step further and she's like, nah, if I'm taking the Scorpion name, I'm taking the whole motif, and she looks really cool. Neat work. Living brain. That's what you get when you read all of his speech bubbles. It's just work. And then his dialogue. I don't know why I'm waxing lyrical on that so much. But the living brain would probably need to be a Build-A-Figure or a deluxe. And again, might be a bit too obscure for people to really want to have as a Build-A-Figure or a deluxe. But the living brain I particularly associate with Superior Spider-Man. I think he was originally, or it was originally created by a supervillain like a Robot Master or someone. And then he was taken out of mothballs by Superior Spider-Man to be used as an assistant. And later to house the mind of Dr. Octopus until he could make a body. It's a great little subplot going on there where he was in the background, always constantly sort of hovering there, and he's like, yes, master, work. And then you can see Dr. Octopus was actually inside there. A cool little story, but also a really fun character. Not so much a Spider-Man character, but certainly orbiting Spider-Man's world is the Maker, the evil version of Reed Richards. Such an important character nowadays, especially with Venom. This character has the big, long mask which extends out the back to contain his grotesquely oversized brain. So gross, but so cool also. And absolutely a character who we need to have added to our rogues gallery of supervillains. Going back around to the hired goons, we have Man Mountain Marco. Not the most interesting design of a character because he's just a big dude, but still a character who does pop up a lot. He's always around just flexing his muscles and looking to pound some heads, and Man Mountain Marco has been doing that since the 70s, I think, if not sooner maybe. So certainly a character who is deserving of his day in the sun, but again, to do him properly, you'd really need like a Juggernaut-sized body, and I don't think too many people are going to be wanting to shell out the money for Man Mountain Marco, so maybe he's one of those figures that we'll just never see. Man-Wolf, John Jameson, a figure that we had before a long time ago, possibly in the Toy Biz days, but a giant big white werewolf with a gem in his chest? Yeah, that's really cool, and he's been focused on a lot recently with issues of the Thunderbolts and Ravencroft. He's the head guardsman at Ravencroft Institute, so he's around a lot. I think he was in Absolute Carnage too. Yeah, no, he was. So he deserves to get that recognition because he is a big-time character in Spider-Man and therefore needs to be a big-time character on our shelves. Something that has been requested a lot is a May and Ben Parker 2-pack. Will we ever get it? I am doubtful. Two elderly folks in a 2-pack, I think that's very, very specific to just some hardcore collectors. But since we've got so many characters in the Spider-Man retro wave, it would be so nice to be able to put those in there. But then I guess if you've got Ben Parker, you need like a very little Peter Parker, like proper nerdy school kid with the jumper and all that kind of look, but I know for one, I would want to get it. I had Gaunt earlier, but there are two versions of Gaunt. Like any good boss in a video game, you've got the standard version, and then you've got the upgraded Mecha Gaunt, and that is exactly like it sounds. A giant, big, hulking mech suit. Again, would need to be a deluxe or a BAF figure, but it would look so cool. And if you had some swappable heads, you could totally fudge that into being any other kind of like a generic mech sort of creature. But yeah, it's a cyborg, so he's got like half human face, and then the rest is all mechanical and huge big guns on the arms. Really great, so much fun. I'd love to have one of those. Menace, going back to Brand New Day. Oh, it's a dubious prospect, but there is some good stuff there. And Menace was a lady who was dating Harry Osborn, and again, this is going back so far in my adult brain I can't remember it, but she was dating Harry Osborn, turns out to be evil, I think maybe hooks up with Norman, gets goblin formula, and she mutates, rather than putting on a mask, she mutates into this goblin menace. And that was cool. Didn't stick around for very long. I think at one point she had like the Hellboy style horns where you saw off the horns and it's just like the stumps, and that was an interesting kind of look. I can't remember what happened to her, but there's a freaky comic cover with her pregnant in her menace form with this big baby bump and Whoa, it's really bizarre. But yeah, I'd like to go and wiki her and find out what happened. But I would say she'd make a fun action figure. A proper old school character who we've all still been waiting a long time for is the Molten Man. Mark Roxton? Either way, the Molten Man is, again, such an easy kind of figure. Just a golden guy, really. But you can put some nice flame effects on him too, because that's the thing. Bright golden guy, but gets hotter and hotter and starts burning with heat. That's really pretty badass. So yeah, just repaint any random angry looking person. I tell you what, I think I've seen some customs on the Nuke body, and that works pretty well. So yeah, big, tough, muscular guy, bright gold with flame effects. Yeah, make it happen. I mentioned the inner demons earlier, well now we have Mr. Negative. Super easy, barely an inconvenience to make, just a guy in a suit but been repainted in black and white. This is one that I don't need to sell too hard because come on, we gotta get it eventually. He was one of the main characters in the Spider-Man video game on the PlayStation, which was amazing. He gets featured more and more, and especially even in the new Spider-Man trailer, we see the Feast location, which he runs in his civilian guise. So I think it's only a matter of time until we finally get comic book Mr. Negative. Adding to our new Warriors team, we would have Namorita, a great fun female Atlantean, blue skin, the little wings on the feet. She's very iconic, sort of toyetic kind of design. So she'd look fantastic on the shelf, maybe in a flight stand, swooping in. She'd be great. She'd complete the new Warriors. She's an absolute essential. The Spawn ripoff Nightwatch. Yes, I know that it's a whole 90s kind of aesthetic which is just borrowed totally from Todd McFarlane's creation, but I think he appears for a panel or two in Maximum Carnage, so damn it, I want him. And also, he would look really fun. You could totally just put a Spawn character in his place and you'd never know the difference. Speaking of completing teams, where is Overdrive? We need to finish our superior foes of Spider-Man, and Overdrive is long overdue. He's a very silly kind of character who has I think maybe a mutant ability to soup up any kind of mechanical vehicle. It's like, really, how does that power even develop? It doesn't make much sense, but it doesn't matter because it's fun and ridiculous. Some people said you could do like a rider's version of him with like a souped up motorbike or something, but I don't think enough folk care about the character. I would, but still, just give us a single release of the figure. That would make me very happy. Now we have Phage. Not Phage from the Life Foundation, but Phage, this big monstrous symbiote-eating alien. Only appeared in an Eddie Brock Venom limited series, but it looked so cool. Totally kind of freaky, bizarre, monstrous with tentacles and fur and claws and teeth. Just a gnashing, weird, mutated-looking The Thing type extraterrestrial. Would make such a cool display piece on the shelf. There was a figure of it from years ago that you can get on eBay for not a crazy price, but most of them are in terrible condition. But still, a new version of that would be a lot of fun. Another Green Goblin who I want is the Phil Urich Green Goblin. So for a short time, there was a heroic Green Goblin. Phil Urich found the Goblin formula by mistake, ended up becoming the Green Goblin. And he basically looks like the regular Goblin, but he has an open chest. So you got the green chest and then the rest of his gear, rather than wearing like the silly hat and the boots, it's all more ragged and kind of, well, sort of 90s edgelord cool looking. But I like a bit of 90s edgelord cool, and this figure fits that bill perfectly. Another Slinger character is Prodigy, who's like the sort of big upstanding leader of the team, a bright gold character, a kind of a weird design, like a mask that cuts off in different places on his face. It looks odd, it looks sort of over-designed for the sake of being over-designed, but still, it's unique, and with that in mind, I would happily add him to the shelf. And completing the Slingers, we have Ricochet. Really cool design. Bright silver, black leather jacket, and he's got that Cyclops kind of design of mask where it goes up and then has the hair coming out the top. But then with the big Spider-Man eyes as well, and the little Ricochet slinging sort of things that he throws. There's a lot of fun that could be had with that character. And then added up with the other three Slingers, they would be so cool to have on the shelves. You want stupid bank-robbing villains? How about the Ringer? I think he featured in the MODOK show, or am I thinking of someone else? Either way, the Ringer, just a guy who fires out rings that can like ensnare people, and really one of those guys who's more annoying than dangerous. You'd be like, dude, seriously? Come on. But such a goofy character that doesn't really feature in any big stories, but to be added to the random Growing Rogues gallery, yeah, he'd be a fun addition. And finally, completing the Life Foundation symbiotes, we have Riot, the big, hefty, chunky one. If they just repainted a smaller buck, that would be kind of annoying, because Riot should be big, mean, bad. All he is just a grey symbiote with a couple of little spikes. It's not particularly exciting, which is why, to do him justice, you gotta make him big. If they make him big, then I'll be very happy to see him. Rocket Racer, a dude on a jet-powered skateboard. What's not to like? Goofy, stupid, ridiculous, but also quite an important Spider-Man character who has had some real hero-type moments. Spider-Man made a team called the Outlaws along with Prowler and Silver Sable and maybe a couple of others, and that was a very 90s-tastic sort of super team and a great sort of street-level type character. I love those more down and dirty, gritty street-level folks, and especially one who is also very bright and colourful. He'd be a lot of fun to have on the shelf with his skateboard in a cool action pose, so yeah, Rocket Racer would be awesome. A character who's recently reappeared in the comics is the Rose, the son of Wilson Fisk and a big-time crime lord. So a cool suit body with the purple mask, that's all you need. Give us a little Rose accessory, but he would go great if they made Delilah as well, because they are very much a team. She is his main henchwoman, because she's hench. That makes sense. But yeah, give us the Rose, because he's been around for such a long time. He's back in prominence now. Make it happen. A real Marmite character is Screwball, another person who came from the Brand New Day era, again featuring prominently in the Spider-Man video game. I really like her design with this parkour sort of character in the white and pink. It's a shame that they're not using her more, because again it sort of taps into new ideas with social media and live streaming and all that kind of stuff. She's this crazy risk-taking, not a vigilante, just a troublemaker really, I suppose. Everything she does for the clicks and the likes, and that's it's almost a bit too on the nose. It's like, you see what we're doing? We're holding a mirror up to society. It's like, yeah, we get it. But the important thing is she looks really cool, so I would love to have her. If we had Judas Traveler, then we gotta have Scryer. Scryer, just a very, very tall silver dude in a black robe, and that's about it. There is like a Scryer sort of cosmic character, and also there's the cult of the Scryers who worship this character, and then you could have that figure be either. You could army build him if you want. I don't think anyone would particularly want to, even I wouldn't want to, but still, just to have Scryer there to put next to Judas Traveler in my fictional Clone Saga wave, yeah, I'd love to see that. Speaking of the Clone Saga, Seward Trainer, Ben Reilly's mentor who ultimately kind of betrayed him, which is a bit of a shame, but again featuring prominently in the Clone Saga, and the father of Carolyn Trainer, the female Dr. Octopus. So there's a bit of legacy and lineage going on there. Seward was the person who is a scientist who kind of helped convince Peter Parker that he was the clone, and he was basically being a bit of a pawn of Norman Osborn. But still, he featured prominently. He has a very 90s sort of costume. It's like, you're a scientist. Why are you wearing a costume? There's no reason for it. But still, I'll allow it because it was 90s, so that means it was great. She-Venom, that's an easy one. One time, Eddie Brock's ex-wife, Anne Weying, gets shot and he gives her the symbiote to help heal her, and we get She-Venom. Really cool design. It's exactly what you would expect, just a female form Venom. But the way she was drawn with massive, huge, big gnashing teeth and the green slime and huge fingers with the spiked nails, it looked really cool. If they recreated her just like that, that would look awesome. And in that story with She-Venom, we also got Sin Eater. We got Sin Eater number 2, but we also need Sin Eater number 1. We need the original Sin Eater. Sin Eater number 2, not necessarily, but I thought he looked cool. But come on, the original Sin Eater with the green mask and the purple clothes, like, that's an absolutely essential guy. I don't know, maybe they don't want to make him because he is quite a, disturbing sort of character. It's not some big bad supervillain, it's just a crazy guy with a gun, and that's like, maybe we don't want to do that kind of thing. And I can understand that, to be honest, but at the same time, he's a really iconic character that I would love to see given the Legends treatment. Someone who we did get not that long ago, but in a very modest form, is Silvermane. Yes, we have the little Silvermane head driving around in the remote-controlled car, which is bonkers and ridiculous, but we also need the proper big cyborg Silvermane. Such a freaky-looking kind of character where you've got this terrifying robot body with this withered old man head on it, and I love that every single time an artist draws him, they do their own interpretation of him. I think there's a recent version in one of the comics where it's the robot cyborg body and his head is more like pickled in a jar. Really grim and gross, but so awesome. I would like kind of classic Silvermane, where it's the sort of Ultron type body with just the old man head on top. It looks weird, but also it looks really cool, and I would definitely love to have him on the shelf. Sleeper, spoken about him before, another symbiote character, but big and hulking with black and green sort of symbiote tendrils and sort of weird gas mask almost looking face. Really, really cool. And also there's another version of him where the symbiote inhabits a cat. So you've got this really cute, toyetic looking sleeper symbiote cat. Really, really awesome. Both of those versions definitely worthy of Marvel Legends. Another new warrior, super essential now, of course, is Speedball. It's just a matter of time until we get Speedball. It must be, because we're building up the warriors with Night Thrasher and Rage, so Speedball must be just around the corner, but I want him to bounce into our lives right now, because he's absolutely a staple member who needs to be represented. You know, I love nothing more than obscure teams, and one of the ones that I want to complete and add to is both Silver Sable's Wild Pack and Spider-Man's whatever they were called. I only mentioned them a couple of entries ago, but still, one of the people who kind of bridges the gap between them is Solo, who is just an army dude who can teleport, really. That's about it. He's pretty much the Punisher. He's the Punisher with red hair and a green getup, but he focused a lot of his attention and comic book appearances in that kind of early 90s sort of phase, and he was a mercenary who would duck in and out of the comics and still appears every now and then. He'll pop up and you're like, oh, it's Solo. I remember that guy. Anti-terrorism, that was his big thing. I'm remembering now, yeah. So he focuses on combating terrorism. And yeah, he teleports in and out, shoots a bunch of people, and then disappears a while. But yeah, he's fun. I'd like to see him. Spider-Side, another Clone Saga character. I've got my custom who looks amazing. But yeah, the psychotic, insane, morphing clone of Peter Parker with all of his memories but none of his morals. Was never officially killed off, just kind of disappeared into comic obscurity. So he's out there somewhere, probably in S.H.I.E.L.D. captivity. But just this reverse costume version of Spider-Man, so the red is blue and the blue is red, that's kind of cool. Then a symbiote looking face where he's got the mask eyes but the mouth as well, and he can morph his hands into weapons like Carnage. That's fantastic. I'd love to see what the actual official HasLab team or Hasbro team could do with that. Although having said that, I bet it wouldn't be as cool as my custom. Why oh why have we not had the Spot? Such an easy character repaint. Just take, I don't know, the Eel for example. Take the Eel figure, whack some black and white paint on him, boom! You got yourself a Spot. I've spoken about him before, so I won't linger on him too much. Just saying, Hasbro, give us the Spot, man. Come on. Here's a bit of a random one. I saw this design and I was like, oh, I really love what they've done there. Steampunk Spider-Woman from the Web Warriors story that sprang out of Spider-Geddon. They're going around all these different realities, finding all these different Spider-Men, Spider-Women type characters, and there is a steampunk Spider-Woman. So basically imagine steampunk lady with goggles and Victorian type gear, excuse me, with mechanical steampunk spider legs. They look really fun and very unusual, and her entire rogues gallery are all steampunk versions of Spider-Man characters. That's so fun. I don't think we would get any of those. They're probably, that's an obscurity on top of an obscurity. But still, just the main steampunk spider lady? Yeah, I'd really love that. Giant dinosaur man? Yes, please. Stegron. Mentioned him before, so again, we're going to move on pretty quick, but the name says it all. A Stegosaurus human monster hybrid? Yeah, okay, definitely add him to my shelf right now, please and thank you. Stunner. We're not done with the Clone Saga yet. Stunner, this beautiful Amazonian blonde goddess of a lady who is in fact just a solid hologram projection. She is the girlfriend of Dr. Octopus, and she was just featured in the Clone Saga but then actually reappeared during Superior Spider-Man, which was quite nice, but again didn't quite get much resolution to the character. But the fact that we have a similar kind of body with the grey She-Hulk type form, you could whack some spikes and stuff, paint the hair yellow, boom! You got yourself a Stunner. Sticks and Stone, mentioned before, so again we'll move on quickly, but two mercenaries that pair so well together. You got Stone, who's just this big hulking dude with shoulder cannons, and then Sticks, this horrible carrion looking skeleton type guy who can, degrade things at the touch of his hands, and they fly around on a surfboard together. Totally bonkers, but also a lot of fun. Superior Goons. When Dr. Octopus was Superior Spider-Man, he had a whole team of people working for him, the Superior Spider-Man Goons, essentially. And they had a fun sort of costume design. The design looked a bit like Hydra, but it was blue and red, and they had goggles, and they were fun. I don't think many people would want to army build them, because they didn't appear for very long, but while they were there, they left an impression on me, and I'd like to see them represented. And of course you can't have Superior Goons without the Superior Spider-Man. Yes, we had a Superior Spider-Man, but he was based on concept art and kind of rubbish. So give us a deluxe Superior Spider-Man with the huge big legs coming out the back, the wrist gauntlets and all the extra detail. Yeah, I would love that. Swarm, a Nazi scientist who got turned into a huge big swarm of bees with a skull for a head and a pink cape and cloak. Yeah, do I need to say any more? Obviously not. Hasbro make it happen, because this guy is so weird, so crazy, so awesome, so demanding of our time. We've had a Back in Black symbiote Deadpool. Heck, we've had a Venom pool. But what we also need is the compound symbiote Deadpool. Boy, and I'm not even a big Deadpool fan. But in the wonderful miniseries of ridiculousness, which was Deadpool versus Carnage, at one point Deadpool gets to absorb 4 of the Life Foundation symbiotes, and they just kind of patchwork stick him together, and it looks really great because it's so colourful as well. But then the extra kicker is that there is a dog that gets the 5th symbiote on him, and we get this adorable, gross symbiote bulldog type creature with multiple eyes and slobbering jaws. That looked great. So those two together, yeah, I would really love that. Tarantula, another really common popular one. The classic Tarantula, the guy in the Spanish bullfighter type mask, the Zorro sort of look, with the red costume and the spiky boots. Again, such a classic retro character that they really need to get round to giving to us. Want to get obscure? Let me give you a real obscure one. Tendril. I know. Who? What? Yes, in Spider-Man The Final Adventure, when Peter Parker for a short time retired and moved to Portland with Mary Jane while she was pregnant, a scientific accident gives this crazy evil bad person weird spider powers, but not in any kind of a good way. It's kind of like Carnage meets Spider-Man with some skeleton type stuff thrown in there. He's gross and hideous and horrible and would look so cool in action figure form. More like something you'd find in like a Todd McFarlane Spawn sort of wave. Like a skeleton, but then with spider legs coming out the back, held together by cobwebs and evilness. Yeah, Tendril would be a badass figure. The answer. What's the question? I have no idea, but if it's what kind of costume looks bonkers and cool on a shelf, the answer is the answer. I know so little about this guy, but just look at him. So ridiculous. And I just definitely think of him as Spider-Man, a character, because I used to collect the Spider-Man Fleer cards in the mid-90s, and the answer was one of them. And even then I was like, but what's the question? The question is, when can I get him on my shelf? Another modern character, and one that I think the jury is out on whether we sort of want her to be canon or not, is Teresa Parker, the sister of Peter Parker. Is she definitely the sister of Peter Parker? It seems that way. A S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who was kind of sort of sequestered away for a long time, brought back, and she's like, hey, I'm your sister. So that's happening now, but it seems kind of weird that she's his sister but doesn't really interact with Aunt May or any of the other sort of Spider-Man characters. It's like, this is a big deal, but it's sort of not. She's always just like popping up going, hey, I'm your sister, let's go on an adventure. And then after she's like, okay, bye. It's like, okay, well, let's see where this goes. But she would be a fun character because she has like the Falcon type wings. That's her gimmick. Because I don't think she has any kind of superpowers. She's just like a shield agent. But considering what an important character she technically is, we definitely should have a legend of her. Trapster, Paste Pot Pete, I've spoken about him before so we won't linger too much, but a bright pink costume with glue guns, yeah, that would be fun to have. Venom. I put Venom brackets perfect because we all know what we're talking about here. Venom on a decent sized chunky buck but with classic proportions. We almost got it with the retro Venom on the Omega Red body with the different color highlights. Like, they're close, but first of all you need to fill in those damn holes on the shoulders and then take away the stylistic paint job, and then we would be left with what I think would be a perfect Venom. And speaking of Venom, Venom 2099, that's a cool version of the character because you've got the basic Venom design, but then with the white mask face, the off-center spider emblem. Yeah, I don't want too many Spider-Man characters from 2099, but definitely him and Flipside, yeah, they would be essential. A super iconic Spider-Man character, or at least one that has appeared in iconic stories, is Vermin. This Rat-Man hybrid sort of character, and could be an army builder as well if you want, because we have a whole horde of Vermins now apparently living in the New York City sewers. But Vermin featured so much in Kraven's Last Hunt, such an important story in the Spider-Man mythos, and we had the Kraven's Last Hunt 2-pack. But then to complete that imagery, that story, we really need to get ourselves a Vermin. How about Wraith? I forget the name of the police sergeant lady who becomes the Wraith. It's like right on the tip of my brain, but I know that I'm not gonna get it. No, I'm not going to torture myself, but Wraith. So yes, this police sergeant who takes matters into her own hands basically and becomes this vigilante, and her costume is really cool. Purple and ninja-y, but also sort of ghostly as well. I would love to see them give her the due that she deserves because she's a cool character and we've not seen her in the comics recently, but considering that they're kind of setting her up, Watanabe, that's it, Captain Watanabe, I think it is. They're setting her up for the Spider-Man Sony PlayStation game sequel. That's what I was trying to say, words are hard. I think it's about time we see her as a Marvel legend. Young Vulture. This is another big one. We've had an elderly Adrian Toomes recently who looked great. I really loved that classic retro Adrian Toomes, but now I want the Life Theft Vulture, which is a completely redone design where he's still in his classic green, but it's more armored. He's got like a headpiece as well. That looks really cool, but most importantly, it's when he has the gimmick of stealing life force from other people to make himself youthful again, so we can have the actual young Vulture head. That would be so great for the 90s display, because it don't get more 90s than Life Theft Vulture. So yeah, come on Hasbro, make it happen. And finally, Z is for Zodiac. The Zodiac are a whole cult of bad guy villains, unsurprisingly based on the star signs of the Zodiac, and that in itself is a really fun gimmick. So you got, Cancer the Crab, you've got the bull, I forget, what the different star signs are. Taurus was the bull, wasn't he? And then the rest you can figure it out. But it's a fun gimmick, and they again featured quite recently during the Spider-Man International sort of phase of Peter's career when he was glow popping all over the place. And they are a very toyetic bunch. Now there's a huge big roster of them, but really there's just one main Zodiac leader type guy. I forget his name, but I'll look it up when I'm doing all the photos for this video. But yeah, the Zodiac would be a really fun new team to start building. And folks, that does it for my list of over 100, I know I went way over 100 Spider-Man characters who I would love to see in Marvel Legends form. What do you make of it? Who did I forget? Comment below, let me know. And if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, then join the 6-1 Clicks by clicking the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Also, if you want to interact more with this channel and be a part of the conversation and talking about future videos and doing polls and different things and sharing pictures of your collections, you can go over to my Facebook group. There's a Model Behaviour Facebook group. So the link is in the description below. So is the link for the Discord, so you can go and chat with people on the Discord if you're more of a Discord kind of person. You can check out my Instagram as well. I'm doing all the plugs this time. My brain's in plug mode, which is rare for me. Check out my Instagram. Again, the link's in the description below. And if you want to go one step beyond, support the channel a little bit further, you can go over to patreon.com/displaying model behavior, just like these saviors of model behavior did. And you can go and see the exclusive videos on there, including the new Legends Legacy review, which I'm doing over on Patreon. And I'm just currently uploading my review of the Shang-Chi movie as well. So there's a lot of stuff to enjoy over on Patreon. But guys, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, keep displaying model behavior.
Chill. Yeah.
A proper old school character who is still waiting for his time to